guys, welcome to the Next Level Live. I appreciate you jumping on today. Very excited about today's guest. We got Matt Smith, who's going to touch on a variety of topics. One of the nice things about where we've continued to head is making sure that we're providing the best possible sales training we can on a regular basis, and hitting the advanced markets during the week as well on Thursdays, and really being able to just put as much out there as we can as it pertains to content, because we're really starting to, we come off of our best issue paid life month ever. So, and February was a short month, and we still issued over $6 million for the month. So you know, Mike, I think about what are we going to do in our next full month. We actually think we're going to hit 7 million issue paid life by June, right? Is that what we talked about? And then I'm going to shave my head. Or Mike, you going to shave my head, Mike?
Yeah.
You're going to shave it? Are you going to do it?
I'll do it.
Okay. Don't cut my head, just shave it.
You got experience.
You got experience. You got experience shaving your own head, not somebody else's head. So we're really excited, though, but all kidding aside, and we're going to make a donation because that's just the right thing to do. We hit 7 million, and we're kind of talking about that internally here, and we'll do that. But for me, what it really reflects as this journey continues is how much we've really gotten people empowered to go out there and sell. One of the things that I always say to people when they're building a business, and I say it to staff here all the time, there are times you don't want to do things, right? Maybe it's the weekend or it's after hours. There's things that you're doing, but you always have to remember that there are agents out there. Some of them maybe just started. Maybe they started 2 days ago. Maybe they started 2 months ago. Maybe they've been licensed for 5 years. And they went out last night to buy some groceries for their family, and they were thinking about the money. Not money on not money for retiring, not money for just I want to pay my bills, my grocery bill. And I remember getting my insurance license and thinking, everybody around me was talking about so many different things, and I was like, I just need to make sure I can pay my bills. All the other things you all are talking about are fine. I need to pay my bills. Today I need to make sure I meet all my bills, take care of my kids. All the other stuff is outstanding, but I need to be on top of this stuff right now. And I think that we can never forget that. And even if we've moved, you know, as we grow, right? You start making, we pay our bills, then we're able to, you know, enjoy some other things that we could enjoy, maybe buy some things, put our kid, whatever it is, your kid in private school, things you put away, investing for your retirement, giving money away, helping other people who are less fortunate, whatever the things you're doing, moving, get a new house, all those things. But how do we remain hungry? And the way I've always remained hungry is, it's not so much based on what I do or don't have or what we can get. It's that I'm 100% sure there are people we're working with that aren't where they need to be yet. It's a journey. You know, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And for us, it's really, really understanding how do we get there? How do we continue to stay focused on it? And I think you're going to hear Matt talk about a lot of that today. I had a great group in this past week, and we were talking about that with newer agents, you know, and I mean newer meaning newer to us or newer to the business. Either way, I mean, we hire people sometimes and they start going through their in-home, and I stop them and go, where is this is really like sterile. Where's the part where you connect with me? Where's the part where you take control? Where's the part where you let me know why you're here? Because it seems like it's a lot of just, it's kind of all over the place, and I don't know how to respond to it. Lack of structure makes us nervous. And when we get nervous and we say stuff like, I'm all set, I don't need to take care of this now, I'll get back to you, that's all caused by lack of control in the home, lack of intentionality, and lack of ability and or desire to connect with the client. You know, I go, what out of that presentation you just gave me, what are things I now know about you that I didn't know before you walked in the door? And a lot of them, it's nothing. Before you walked in the door, you were a stranger. 20 minutes into your presentation, 30 minutes in, you're done. And I know as little as I did before you walked in the door. I know your name, and now I've seen your face. I don't know about how you grew up. I don't know about your siblings. I don't need you to give me your entire life story. Give me something that's relatable. I said to Dean, what do you share? I'm from Bosnia, lived in Germany. And he starts going through all these things about why he's able to connect with people. And I go, that's all great. I agree with you. I think that, you know, you're going to find people that, yes, they served, and yes, all that's true and accurate. But at the end of the day, Dean, the most important part is you just shared something you didn't have to share. You demystified who you are. If you were raised by a single mom, if you were raised by a single dad, if you've gone through something in life you think that they can relate to. Maybe they're in a situation that you've been through. I've gone through this, guys. I know it's tough. Wouldn't it be crazy to have gone through something and watch somebody else go through it and not go, I've been through that. Man, it's tough, and I'm as imperfect as anybody else. Here are some things that helped me. I'd like this, if I can help, I can help. So as you're listening to Matt talk, and Matt's going to take this, the next, 50 minutes here, 53 minutes, and roll with it. He's an unbelievable trainer, because when you listen to what he says and how he says it and how he connects with folks and how he provides structure, when you listen to him talk, there's no doubt when he's in the home helping, he's in charge. Somebody's got to be in charge. Parents and kids don't look at each other and go, what do you want to do next? Not when the kids are 5 and 7. And they don't. I don't walk into my doctor and go, what do you want to do next, doc? I expect that he has the answer. He has a medical degree. You have the insurance license. You're the only licensed person. So I really want you to just listen and kind of maybe put aside some of the things you're thinking about. If what you're doing is going well and rolling, then take a couple things out of this thing that maybe you might tweak. If you need an overhaul, and you can't overhaul everything, right? Like, let's one thing at a time. You can't bring your car and get everything done. It's like, I can only afford to get this done now. That'll get it running. What can I do to get it running? And then I can take care of all the extracurricular stuff afterwards. So we're just trying to make sure that right now we're getting people successful, getting them profitable, getting them challenged. The company's growing. So people say to me, this lead's hard for me. I'm like, it's how we're breaking records. So is this one. That's how we're breaking records. It's working. Find people that it's working for. Listen to what they're doing and mimic it and imitate it. And a great person to listen to and imitate some of the things that he does in the home, on the phone with clients, is Matt Smith. And it is all yours, Matthew John Smith. I appreciate you, buddy. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Sean Mike, for having me on today's Next Level Call. It's always an honor and privilege to be able to serve you. I always get more out of this than probably you get out of it. And today I've got this broken down into 3 different sections for your call. I'm going to go over some success tips that you may have heard of. I'm going to add new twists to them as well, some new thought processes for you to think about when it comes to our business. I'm also then going to get into how to capture every single sale, how to get every single sale. And then I'm going to transition into how to overcome, I need to think about it. I'm also going to train you on how to close unhealthy clients today. And then our final section, I'll get into how to pivot from one product to the other, so it gives you the most opportunity in the house to capture business. So when it comes to success principles, it all comes down to the first thing, which is believing in yourself. Now, when it comes to belief, the one thing that I've noticed for most individuals in this business is when your activity level is super low, your belief level remains to be the same, super low. And when you think of the Hall of Fame producers, the producers that are doing over $400,000 in an annual basis here at Family First Life, the reason why their belief level is so high is because they have no white space on their calendar. And what happens when you have a very high activity level is you start to understand that you believe, based off the work that you're doing, that you are deserving of more. The other thing that I think about when it comes to believing yourself is I actually think about being in the house and persuading your client. So also belief comes in different forms, right? One thing that you hear a lot of, sales trainers across the country, they talk about persuasion, how great it is, et cetera, et cetera. Really, at the end of the day, persuasion is one thing, and that's how much you believe in what you do, how much you believe in your product, how much you believe in yourself. And that definitely comes across to your clients. So understand the first part of this process, the first start of you becoming successful with Family First Life inside a financial services industry is purely from a belief standpoint. And we're going to get into other things that will help your belief level rise, but it all starts with you. I promise you that. The next scenario is you've got to understand how opportunity costs affect your business, especially when you start to come from like a W-2 world to a self-employed environment. I believe one of the things that I have missed over the years is everything you do comes with a cost. So every choice you make has an effect or an opposite effect on another choice that you make. So if you're going to spend all your time in the field producing for income producing activities, that's great, but it's also going to affect your ability to have a business, build your agency, and grow rapidly there as well. So the one things that I think about early on with Family First Life that I would regret, which I would give you some shortcuts to success, is I wish I wouldn't have been so laser focused on driving my personal production up. I wish I would have had a more disciplined schedule between running appointments and building my agency. So one of the recommendations that I would give all of you is talk to your manager, see what your schedule looks like, and make sure you start to dominate every single quinton in this business, because that's how you start to become wealthy, that's how you start to build capital, and that's how you start to relieve a lot of your problems, right? The next scenario is you got to make sure that you create a domino effect in this business. I see a ton of new people get into this business and they think that they can wing it. And what I mean by that is you've probably heard, proper preparation prevents poor performance. So the big scenario for most people is they get in the business, you've got to get great at getting leads, you've got to get great at getting on the phone, then you get great in the in-home, and then we can train you and show you how to move from one scenario to another as far as products or closings, etc. But the first step is the most important. And I believe 80% of this business is the phone, 15% is the in-home presentation, and 5% is product knowledge. But the problem is for most new people, you spend, 80% of your time on 5% of the business in the beginning because your lack of confidence. And I promise you, we're not going to put you in a home where you're not going to be in a confident position. You're not going to know your products. You're not going to know what to sell. So you've got to trust the process, and you've got to get really great on the phone first. I think there's plenty of people that just wing it and they don't prepare enough. So you've got to get great at that. You got to move to the next scenario. And then as you start to get great at running final expenses, example, then we can talk to you about like how to start dominating internet leads, or how to start dominating the mortgage market, or how to start dominating social media leads. We can get you into other lead types that will generate other types of business inside of the quintons we use at Family First Life. But the key thing is I need you to get your activity level up. I need you to run 8 to 10 appointments a day, so you're condensing that schedule so you have no white space, so your confidence drives up, and you start to create the domino effect. Because momentum, that's huge in business. It's really easy to lose, but if you keep on the throttle and do one thing and get good and then get great at it at a time, you'll notice that your business starts to really get that hockey stick effect that you want. The next scenario is the phone, like we're just talking about, is most people, in my opinion, when it comes to phone skills, their script is just too long. There's nothing good that can happen on the phone. One thing that we've been doing inside of our agency that I know that has been helping individuals out tremendously is we are starting to spend time with them on our Zoom dials. So we actually do live dials. I or another manager would get on and we listen and we coach them as they do live dials. We don't interrupt or anything, but we give them specific tips. I can think of last week where I had a newer agent on making dials. They were struggling in the beginning. We made minor tweaks, not even major tweaks, right? We made minor tweaks to just calling some social insurance leads for Facebook. And all of a sudden, by the end of an hour dialing, he had booked maybe one appointment in the beginning. Over the first 40 minutes, he booked 5 appointments in the last 20 minutes just by making small adjustments. So generally in this business, it's not all these large, huge things that you need to, completely change. It's all just minor adjustments. And a lot of times you're saying things on the phone that aren't necessary. They're not important. And you're getting in conversation with seniors, and then you lose control and you get, hey, I just wanted the price, or I'm busy, or all these scenarios, and you're not equipped properly to then just set the appointment. So you just got to understand my advice: shorten up your script, set the appointment, be assumptive. Sean Mike talks about all the time, being assumptive on the phone, being assumptive in the home. These people have filled out form, they request information. It's our job not to screw it up, right? That's extremely important as well. And then number 5, you got trial closes. So many of you, the one thing, because I came from the auto industry originally out of college, the one thing that I learned in F&I in the car business, doing finance and insurance, is trial closes work. And what trial closes allow you to do is they allow you to have feedback on your client. And what you notice if you're not using trial closes, you're really not aware of whether or not you're building value throughout the entire presentation. So your job when you're sitting down, doing financial inventory with every single client, for example, your job is to just make sure that everything you're saying is agreeable. So using trial closes like, does that make financial sense? Does that make sense? Would you agree? Using it all along the way and then getting them to say, yes, that makes sense. Yes, that makes sense. You're tying down all these small, it's like you're step selling all the way through the process, and it's gauging your feedback and whether they're really going to be doing business with you. I think that's an area for everyone on this call that can get significantly better when you're sitting down in the house. It's just making sure by you having control inside that financial inventory, making sure that they are agreeable to terms, making sure you're using those statements. I think you're gonna drive up value. I think you're gonna get a better understanding of how much your clients are gonna be communicating with you throughout the process. So it's important to use trial closes. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not complicated. You just need to make sure that, does that make sense, John and Mary? Would you agree, John and Mary? Does this make financial sense, John and Mary? Then you know that you're within the right budget. That's what it's all about. The next thing is you've got to develop some grit. Listen, there's going to be times, I've been there before, many people have been there before, that you're going to feel like you want to quit. If you're someone that gets into different businesses, and you're gangbusters the first 6 months, seen this a million times, right? You are just coming out and you are just dominating in the first 6 months, and then you start to lose interest, and then you change that new behavior that you want everything so badly. You change that behavior, and then all of a sudden your activity starts to fall off, your hunger starts to fall off. You start to lose interest quickly. You start to look at other things. You're probably someone that really needs to develop some grit. Grit is just a sustained effort over time. You hear people talk about perseverance and persistency. It all has to do with you having that internal grit to really want to make a difference for you and your family. You always hear people about their why or their reasons. These are all things that if you make them personal, it will help you develop that grit too. But if you're just getting in the business just trying to make a dollar or something, it can be pretty difficult for you. So you've got to dig deep and figure out why you're here, what you want out of this business, and then we can help you maximize that and really gain your potential throughout the entire process here at Family First Life. Also, which is funny, because here's the dichotomy between developing grit and knowing when to quit. Now, what do I mean by knowing when to quit? What I mean is you need to know when to quit being lazy. You need to know when you need to quit with your poor habits. You need to know when you're not that good on the phone. That's why you've got to go into some dial sessions with your teams. That's why you've got to get some feedback and not take it as criticism. Your manager and your upline here is to help you really designate and design a plan that's going to work for you, that allows you to lead up to your potential. But the problem is a lot of times, if you're, I've heard Sean talk about this before, if you're calling old leads over and over, and you're getting this much results and you're expecting things to change, well, that's called insanity, right? So you probably need to quit that, right? Or if you notice that you're not getting the right results over and over, well, guess what? You probably need to quit that. So understand how to fix yourself in the business. Understand what creates a sense of urgency for you, why you're lazy, all these different things. Look at yourself and knowing that sometimes quitting is not a bad thing. As much as we say, stick with it, you need to know when to quit doing some of these poor behaviors, because I can think of plenty of interviews that we've done over this past week with individuals that we spoke about, and they were just doing the same things over and over, and they're wondering why the water line for their bills and everything is right there, and they're drowning all the time. So It's just because whatever guidance they were getting was the wrong guidance, and they probably didn't know any better, which is the most dangerous place to be. Is what you don't know is what you don't know. So that's the most dangerous place to think of. So know when to make adjustments in your business, and I think you'll find, more success there as well. You've got to make sure that you are developing your skills. So the reason I get on all these calls, the reason I love the different podcasts that we do, I love the conference calls we do, I love the advanced market sales calls we do. The reason why I have never missed a call, and if I have missed a call, I'll watch it, right? You have to become a student of the game. So the nice thing about success is it all leaves tracks. And here at Family First Life, there's not a company out there that has the type of 6 to 7 figure income earners, the type of top producers that are producing multiple 6-figure issue paid numbers. You just don't see it in the industry. I promise you that. I'm very aware of what's out there, and we are unique and special because we drive quality leads to producers. We put you in front of clients that are ready to purchase. We give you the sales abilities and tactics to allow you to close these clients. We also just give you the comp where you can make a living and really provide for your family, which are all huge things. But if you don't develop skills where we can start to transition into other markets, like if you haven't written an IUL, that means you're not developing your skills. And if you're not writing an IUL consistently, it means that you're not developing your skills, because that's a huge market. You should make 6 figures off of IUL sales every single year, for example. And that's not even our bread and butter. Our bread and butter is simplified issue, non-medical products, final expense, knockout questions, etc. That's where at least 90% of our business has stayed. Then we've got advanced markets with annuities, Medigap, etc. But I promise you, by you just asking and slowing down a minute inside of that financial inventory, I think you'll start to find yourself developing skills and talking about that more. And I'll touch on that a little bit later when we talk about how to pivot in this call as well. Number 9 is you've got to learn how to control your emotions. So hard to do sometimes, But listen, I have seen so many people in this business where literally they, get a deposit. They think, oh man, I'm going to retire. I'm literally going to retire. It's all over. Like this is, man, I can't believe it. I'm going to go buy my new car. I'm going to spend all this money. And all of a sudden they don't have money for leads. And then they have their first chargeback and they realize, oh man, oh my gosh, I'm going to get kicked out of my house. I'm going to go broke. I'm going to be in the soup line. I'm going to, your emotions you go so high, so low. Some of you have seen my roller coaster scenario where you're going up and down, where you're literally all on cloud 9 and the next moment you're literally crying like a baby. You've got to stay level on all levels. You got to stay level for you. You've got to stay level for your clients, because your clients are trying to, push your buttons too. That's extremely important. So you got to understand how your emotions will dictate and control your mind. And once you can start to get a control of your mind, it can change your life. I think one analogy I love to use is a lot of times with our emotions, they're literally like if you take a 10,000 foot view of your emotions, take a step back for a moment, and you see all your emotions like moving traffic in front of you. A lot of times the problem is we feel like we need to go get into the car, right? We need to go in and get into these emotions. A lot of times we can let our emotions pass. A lot of times we've got to just let go and let our emotions pass, let the traffic go through, because it just takes time. So a lot of great leaders do that. I can think of many of you on the call right now where if you notice the top leaders at Family First Life, when you think something's super urgent, something's going on in their business, I bet you they have a different perspective. And that's because they're able to control their emotions. So hard to do a lot of times, but you becoming more self-aware of it is going to help you as well. The other thing I would tell you about emotions, and I'll kind of dovetail off into a little /A section here, is it's extremely important to be confident in this business. It's extremely important. What's even more important than confidence, though, especially early on, is giving yourself some compassion. And what I mean by this is if you're able to give yourself some self-compassion, you're going to forgive yourself for some of your shortcomings. Meaning when you fail and you have compassion for it, you know, hey, I tried my best, now I'm going to do it again. So understand there's a big difference between, you have to be confident. I'm a huge fan of confidence. It drives everything. Everybody wants to be confident and confident in home, confident with clients, etc. But be more self-compassionate, because we all fail, and it's okay. And you just got to get back on the horse and do it again. And all the numbers work themselves out every single time. So that's one thing that I would say too. Lastly is, I think this has been a game changer and a process for me throughout my career in sales, is making sure that I'm constantly trying to change my identity. So, you know, you've always heard that you are the sum of the 5 people that you hang around the most. And, you know, think of their incomes, behaviors, etc. You're probably the average of all those things. So there's a lot of times that we talk about, you might need to get rid of a family member, unfortunately. You might need to get rid of a friend. I was talking to one of my top managers the other day. He says, you know what? 2 of my best friends they're not in the business or anything. He goes, I don't talk to them anymore because they're alcoholics, for example. They just do nothing for me. I can think of many people that have shared some things that they've had in the past where now they don't do it. They don't associate with certain individuals because they realize you're getting nothing out of it. So understand that you've got to start to level up, ratchet up your identity to those around you, and be aware of what brings you down. I've had a multiple conversations, a lot of flooding memories are coming to me quickly here on different individuals that are starting to change. And what's interesting about that, as you start to change who you hang around, your identity in business starts to change. And you've probably heard the saying where, you know, you need to understand what type of thermostat you're running at. So if you're a person that runs at an 80-degree temperature, you know, when we get down to 65 degrees, we'll do whatever it takes to get to that 80 degrees. Like, for example, if you had to make $1,000 in the next 24 hours and not even doing insurance, you had to do it, you would figure out a way to do it. You'd sell something on, you know, eBay or Amazon or whatever, and you'd make that money. So what's interesting is that's what happens when we go below our comfort level and we're pushed down to that 65-degree temp. We'll do everything, fight, scratch, urgency comes up, etc. Boom, we're back to 80, we're comfortable. The problem that I see with a lot of new people and even veteran agents is when we get above that, you know, whatever temperature you're normally running at, when we get above it, we start to slow ourselves down and do everything it takes to stay comfortable and understand where that 80-degree temperature is. There's a theory that I've heard where you can ratchet up your business about 130% at a time. Your job is to condense time as much as possible. So your job is to keep ratcheting up, keep building water lines like a fixed index annuity where you can't lose your compounding interest or principal that you put in, and keep building water lines on your, you know, personal to develop your identity and keep changing and evolving in the business. And I think you'll find yourself really starting to open up new thoughts, new ideas. You'll look at scenarios much differently, and I think you'll find yourself with a ton of success in this business. So I hope this helped. I'm gonna go ahead and move to section 2. So I'm gonna go over with you what you need in every single house. There's 5 things that you have to capture every sale. The other scenario that I'll be covering here is the I need to think about it close, or the I need to think about it scenarios that we all get with our clients, and how to overcome those. When it comes to these 5 things, the first thing that you need to understand, it all comes down to your people skills. So like 6 months ago, I did one of these next level calls and I talked about like 20 different people skills that you need to start to hone into and really create for you and your personal business. I talked about how you relate to others. I talked about strong communication skills, being patient in the home, making sure you can earn people's trust, making sure that you have the right listening skills, make sure that you're showing like a genuine interest in others, making sure that you do persuade them with a lot of certainty. These are all extremely important when we're trying to sell ourselves. It's going to gain a lot of trust. The other big scenario that we're talking about when it comes to people skills is whether or not they like you. That's really what it comes down to, because at the end of the day, they're not doing business with the insurance company. They're doing business with you as an individual. It's really important for you to understand that. It's you being accountable to your own business. And I think as you start to develop and obtain better people skills, I think you'll notice that your sales drive up. I think you'll notice you'll capture more business. I think you'll be more self-aware on some of the shortcomings you have, and your business can only grow from there. The next scenario I would say inside of the sale is you got to make sure that they understand your product and your solution and why it fits them the best. So communication really works one way. If they can't communicate and tell you what you just said to them, that means you're doing a poor job of delivering the content to your client. So make sure whatever solution that we're offering, whether it's HMS 125 cash back, or you're running a final expense, Eagle Premier type scenario, make sure that they understand that these are level premiums, they're a level death benefit. They expire when you do, they have some living benefits. Whatever products you're doing, make sure you explain it so they understand it. Make sure they know it's a tax-free death check that will come to their house in the name of Mary, right? Make sure they understand that, because that's how we create more value, and then they have more confidence in your product and solution. Now we come to our company. Our company comes in two ways. So our company comes with the insurance company. So the insurance company that we're going to provide is an A-rated insurance company. They've been in business for 100 plus years. They've got a great track record of paying their death claim, which is the only thing that I care about for Mary, is making sure she does get that tax-free check when you're no longer here. Make sure that you explain the company so they have confidence in who they're doing business with. A lot of times too with people, like I'm not a fan of pointing out negative at all in the house, but a lot of times I let people know that, hey, if you're trying to look for a reason not to do business with any insurance company in America, you can find one. There's always some negative scenarios that people find, but we don't have all the story. So what I do know is this: there's a reason why they're A-rated. There's a reason why they've been in business for 100 years. I've seen it work for multiple clients of mine, as well as multiple agents here at Family First Life, and I know that it's important for you and your family. So eliminate some of that, like, hey, I haven't heard of this company, or generally that doesn't happen, but I'm just giving you some food for thought on your product and solution in your company. The next thing I would say is you got to sell them on Family First Life. The reason why you chose Family First Life was you didn't want to become a captive agent where it's a one-size-fits-all scenario. You are a broker, which allows you multiple options, multiple carriers, and it allows you to give the best products and solutions for their specific scenario. So it's important to understand why they choose Family First Life versus a captive agency. I think that's extremely important in order to value. So that's like your first three scenarios inside of that. The next thing is we want to make sure and make logical sense inside of financial inventory. So many of you with financial inventory, I believe, aren't doing as good a job as you need to do. Slow down a minute, just slow down, take control, but slow down and make sure you're asking all the questions. Make sure you ask about how much credit card debt they have. If you don't, I'm using this as an example, if you don't ask them how much credit card debt they have, they might be spending $800 a month and figure they can't even afford $100 for insurance. But if they're spending $800 a month on their credit card and they're spending 20% on interest, but we can provide solutions like, hey, John and Mary, if you go to nerdwallet.com, national site that has credit card offers, you go to balance transfers, you could do a 0% for 18 or 24 months. You could play the credit card game after that, but the best type of money is free money, and then you can make some progress on that 30 grand you owe on your credit cards. And now what we can do is, I'd recommend you spend like $600 on your credit cards, and now I've got $200 here for this HMS 125 cash back scenario, because you can't afford not to have this coverage, because we really don't have any money to rely on if you did die. You not only have a mortgage, but you've got credit card debt, so you're really leaving everyone in harm's way. So you can't afford not to do this coverage at this point. Does that make sense, John and Mary? Yes. Great. I just need your driver's license, right? So a lot of times there's so many opportunities, and if you slow down, you're going to find more opportunities inside of that financial inventory, and you'll make logical sense to the client. Now, the last thing and the most important thing, and I love Brian Mendenhall, I gave great examples last week of how to bring out emotion in the sale. I don't think anybody does it better than Brian, but you need to have the ability to paint a picture with words. You need to put them inside the story, because emotion moves and it creates a sense of urgency. Without emotion, you're wondering why you're not closing. It is simply that. They'll need to think about it. They'll need to get back to you. So if you don't have an emotional story, so if you don't talk about the fact that, if John doesn't get home and he died of an accident, there's no time for you to have any financial, it just hits you all at once, right? There's no time. If he didn't make it home off the freeway tonight, texting and driving, etc. Have you ever seen accidents on the side of the street? Tell a story, whatever it might be. Read, obituaries. You know your family. You know your friends. You have stories. If you don't, you can borrow them from your manager, your agent, etc. You have those stories. So if you don't drive that storytelling, you're not going to create a sense of urgency. They're going to be lukewarm, and you're going to wonder why you're not getting business. Now, the great thing about a good storyteller is once they get emotional, they check their logic. Once they check their logic, they say, I can't afford it. And they say, this makes sense. And then they go back and they say, wait a second, do I trust you? Do I trust your product and solution? Do I trust your company? So if you have all 5 things, you're going to notice that you start to capture that business. The next thing I would say is you're going to meet people that say, with all that said, you have all 5 things, whatever, maybe they just need to think about it, right? The first thing I would say is if we're doing all 5 of those things and we're creating those value, you're going to eliminate a lot of that I need to think about it up front. So that's the number one way to eliminate I need to think about is be certain, have people skills, present, be assumptive. I think you'll eliminate a lot of that I need to think about it. However, let's say you go through the sales process and you still get it. We all get it. So let's cover, another 3 ways that we can help you learn how to close this business. So the first thing is, hey, John and Mary, really at this point, there is nothing to think about because the insurance company has not made a decision whether they make you an offer or not. You still need to qualify for these products. So I'm going to need your driver's license. I'm going to ask you some health questions. We're going to get you that policy, and then that will allow you to, give us time to see whether or not you want to move forward. So I just need to see you and get you qualified. Grab your driver's license. I need to ask you some questions. So there's number 1, kind of a qualifying close. It can work effectively. That could be one way that you can try to eliminate the I think about it. Another way is, listen, John and Mary, I'm assuming because you took the time to fill out this form online, because you took the time to fill out this form and send us in the mail, because of whatever scenario, that you're leaning towards taking action, right? Oh yeah, we're gonna take action. Okay, great. Listen, 10 years ago, it was probably a rash decision where you needed the time to figure out your finance and everything. Listen, we went over everything that you need to know about this. It sounds like you're leaning towards doing it. Hey, let's just take it off the table and get it done now. Does that sound fair, John and Mary? So that's more of your leaning towards close. The last one is my favorite. Love this one because it does work effectively. I've used it several times myself. And that is a 3 scenario close. So the 3 scenario close is, hey, John and Mary, do you need 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 weeks to make this decision? Oh, 90% of the time, by the way, they'll say 2 or 3 days. They'll say, I just need 2 or 3 days, Matt, we'll get back to you. Okay, great. Is it okay, John and Mary, that I ask you a few questions that you're gonna be asking yourself over the next 2 or 3 days right now? Yeah, man, that'd be fine. Okay, the first one is, does this make financial sense for you? Can you afford it according to your budget? Yeah, we feel like we can afford it. Okay, great. Do you understand the product and solution? Yes, absolutely. We understand the product and the solution. And are you comfortable with the company? Yep, we're comfortable with the company. Okay, great. The last thing is, are you comfortable with doing business with me? Yes. Great. Let me get your driver's license. We'll just see if you can get you qualified, and we'll take care of it. So the difference there is you talk about the budget, you talked about comfortable with the product and the company, and you talked about comfortable doing business with you. If those three things are in line, you need to press forward and move on and get them qualified. So that's your kind of 3 scenario close, 3 qualification close, whatever you say it, but you flush out budget, because that's why they need time. Time is time is just a fallacy for all the clients, so it doesn't make sense, and you go from there. The last portion of this is I'm going to talk to you about your unhealthy client close. So whether you're getting your leads from, it could be an internet ever quote, it could be a social media close where the secure mentor or SIL leads, or this could be direct mail mortgage. You're going to meet clients that want more coverage than they can actually qualify for. So let me address to you how to close these clients, and this will help you identify these individuals. So the common thread we always use is financial inventory. So we're going to use financial inventory, and we're going to make sure we find premium. And on the back of the lead, I'm going to start to draw out a scenario. Now, I learned a long time ago in the car business doing finance and insurance for 8 years. My family owns the world's largest Dodge Chrysler dealership. That's really where I learned how to close versus sell, where painting a picture on the back of a form, people can be very visual. So if you don't do this, I'd really recommend you implement it into your business, simply because it adds value. And when value exceeds price, people buy. So when you sit down with a client and you say, hey, listen, John, let me go over what fully underwritten life insurance. So this doesn't matter what the lead is, you're just educating them on the process. Let me go over what fully underwritten life insurance is versus a simplified issue non-medical type product. So John, let's say John is 70 years old. He had stints put in about 3 years ago. He cannot qualify for any sort of really non-medical simplified issue term. So we're looking at more like a whole life final expense, Eagle Premier type scenario, instant decision in the house, knockout questions, great policy, great way to capture more business in the house. So your job is to create a ton of value. The next scenario is you have, let's say, a $200,000 mortgage with John. He pays $1,350 a month with his impounds at 5% interest. So I'm literally drawing this out on the back of a paper for John. So this is more of an equity close. This is more of a time close. So what I talk about is, John, what is your value of your house right now? John's house is worth $300,000. Great. Okay, so you have pretty good equity in your house right now. John's house, you owe $200,000 on your mortgage. This is where you need to start painting a picture and putting them in a scenario. Say John is 70. John, your family history dictated, I think your dad, you said, died at 72. Your mom lived in her 80s. So, we got a little mixed bag, but who knows? Let's say you die sooner than we hope for. You die in 10 years. So we're going to paint a picture and put John into it. And this helps build value. So this is a different type of storytelling, but it's something you really need to do. So what I do is I say, listen, John, your house is going to appreciate over the next 10 years. So let's say in 10 years, your house is now worth, $360,000. Okay? Right here, and I write that down. And let's say you pay a lot of the interest up front on your mortgage and then it falls off, but let's say you die in year 10. Well, you're approximately going to owe $160,000 in year 10. So right now, John, let's say you die at age 80. Between what your house is worth and what you owe, you've got about $200,000. You're writing this in big letters, by the way. Bigger letters for the value. You've got about $200,000 of equity for your house. Here's what most people do based off of your specific scenario and what they can qualify for. So John, what we can do is I can get you a $30,000 policy with Americo that's, a level premium, level death benefit, expires when you do. It's just $242 a month, but the great thing about this, John, is you're paying $242 a month, not for the $30,000 tax-free check for Mary. You're paying $242 a month for the $200,000 of equity plus the $30,000. So can you see why you don't need this big $200,000 policy anyways? Why just giving yourself and your spouse and your children, or whatever scenario we've got, giving yourself time actually makes the most amount of sense? Yes. Great, I just need your driver's license. I've got some health questions to ask you. So it's clear, just go over the equity close, make sure they understand they're not paying the small, you always write it smaller, by the way, smaller premium here. The death benefit, you write big death benefit, big equity. Make sure they tie it all in together to build more value. And then I think you'll start to understand how to close those unhealthy clients, because what they're seeing is you need to explain the difference between fully underwritten life insurance and what we do. Fully underwritten life insurance is where they throw you on a scale, draw your blood and urine, dig into your medical records, and you'll be table rated or declined, and then it's going to ruin the chances of you even being able to get insurance in the future. So this makes the most amount of sense for your specific scenario. So that is your unhealthy close. I'll be back with section 3 now. All right, we're here in the final section, and I'm going to talk to you about how to make a pivot in the house. This could be a crucial area for your sales. This could really generate a huge amount of income, because the one thing that you need to understand is if you leave the house without a sale, the chances of you actually getting the sale are slim to none, and slim left town. So my point is it all starts inside of the financial inventory that, like we spoke about. When it comes to, I'll give you some specific scenarios here. So it starts with our work policies, for example. A lot of times when we don't identify things inside of the sale, it will come back to haunt us later on in the sale. So for example, when we say, do you have anything else that would act like life insurance? Do you currently have life insurance? We get out their coverage or whatever it might be. They talk about, oh, I have a work policy. Okay, great. How much do you have? I have, my salary times 3 at work. Okay, so it's like $200,000. Great. The first thing you need to understand is usually, depending on the state, but above $50,000, you pay income tax on that benefit. So you need to understand that the benefits generally aren't quite what they've seen. The other scenario that you need to understand is if you decide to change your job, how corporate-owned life insurance works is you don't get to take it with you because the company owns it. So as great as a work policy may be, I would never ever put your family in jeopardy of actually losing their home or being able to, live in poverty due to a poor decision and assume that your work would ever take care of you. Does that make sense, John and Mary? Yes, and it's a lot of this when it comes to work policies. It's similar to you owning a company car. You've got to give it back to them when you leave. The other scenario that I see a lot of times for people is they get diagnosed with an illness like cancer, and they no longer can perform their work duties, and they end up not even dying, for example. They end up losing their job because they can't perform the job because of treatment, etc. Things get worse because of this, because they didn't have a HMS 125 with living benefits, for example, that would help pay off the house if they did get some sort of critical or chronic illness, terminal illness, etc. But they're not able to get individual private life insurance now because they completely relied on their work. So not only by you taking action on this product now, it will help, make sure that the house is paid for if you do get chronic or critically ill along the process. It will not put your family in jeopardy because you assumed that the work coverage was going to take care of you throughout your entire life. So a lot of times too, what I've seen is people do die, but they don't die instantly. They lose their job. They don't have coverage. I had a physician that was a heart transplant physician up in Spokane, and he was, one of my favorite people, great client, wife was tremendous, and they did not get their $1 million work coverage because he had to fight through a scenario with his heart and ended up being a pretty nasty scenario. So work coverages, unless you instantly die of an accident or something like that, generally there's a lot of red tape that we don't get to see, and that's why it's so darn inexpensive, because you just technically don't own the coverage. So John and Mary, does it make sense why we aren't going to be relying on your work coverage today. Yes, the great thing about that is then you're not pivoting later because work coverage became the objection, right? Another way that you'll see opportunities to pivot is when they do own current coverage. So extremely important to get out policies. Be very confident and make sure you make it a big deal. Otherwise, they probably won't get out the policies. But get out the policies so you can identify what they have and the best way to pivot off of a sale. Generally, most people have term, right? I just can think of a client that I met just 2 days ago, and they had a term that they bought about 15 years ago. In 5 more years, it expired, and they just had taken out a mortgage recently. So at 30 years, worth of coverage, they're in their mid 40s. So they understood that we're going to probably most likely outlive that term. And the biggest thing is when you're selling against a term policy. So according to LIMRA, Life Insurance Marketing Resource Association, 2% of term pays out. Tom Hegna talked about it at our national convention. So because 2% of term pays out, John and Mary, I'd recommend that we look at this option. So whether you're getting a full cash back option or a permanent option, I like to do apples versus oranges. It depends on the age. Like if you're above 60, I start to look at more permanent products, okay? If you're still under 60, I like term a lot, cash back, living benefits, etc. But like the biggest thing that you need to identify is people don't understand how insurance works. The only type of life insurance that matters is the one that pays when you die. So the biggest scenario is they need to know that, hey, term is the least expensive. Permanent generally, like a UL is generally about twice as expensive as term, and a whole life policy is about 2.5 times more expensive than term. So educating your clients on how pricing works with specific products. A lot of times people get suckered into a captive company. I won't name companies, but a captive scenario where they're doing a 10-year term just to get someone in a price point, and then here they are, they're 65 or 55 and they're that much older, and they need to re-up their term. So your job is to be able to identify the holes in their coverage and reallocate that premium. They might be spending $140 a month on current life insurance, but they don't have $100 for you. But if we identify why our value is better, that's where money will start to exchange hands, and you'll start to understand that, hey, the budget's tight, but we can replace that coverage. We can put you in a better situation, and it makes more financial sense to get you this coverage for a longer period of time. Does that make sense, John and Mary? Yes. So current coverage is a big scenario for you, where if you can identify that inside of financial inventory, I think you're going to do a great job. Then we start to get into like lukewarm presentations. So a lot of times it's interesting. We will purchase leads, we'll drive long distances, we get to the house, and you don't give it your all. I've done it before. Everybody's done it before. I don't know why. I recommend you really limit this type of behavior, because you're putting in so much effort to get there, and then you decide to do something half-hearted, and it comes across lukewarm, and they just don't buy from you because the solution wasn't presented in a very good way. So what I would tell you when it comes to this regard is make sure that you can at least pivot to like an accidental death policy at a bare minimum. Let's say the HMS product is $190, and you can see their nonverbal communication is standoffish, and you can tell that it's just too much for them. You want to make sure and say, hey, listen, let me tell you how traditional mortgage protection products work, for example. Traditional mortgage protection, the bank used to offer accidental death. They no longer do, so this is the reason why you get a ton of solicitation. The reason why you get 12 letters in the mail is simply because banks don't offer it, so now you're going to meet with a bunch of insurance brokers that are presenting these products, etc. In fact, even the non-medical scenario, it's built from insurance company, but it has nothing to do with the bank. So I make sure they understand that I'm not here to trick them, manipulate them. I'm going to tell them the truth, but here's the facts. John and Mary, you got a $350,000 mortgage, I'd recommend you spend $67 a month just to make sure that if one of you doesn't make it home off the freeway because someone's texting and driving, that you're completely taken care of. And I tell stories. I had a client in Central Washington about 4 years ago. He pulled over to text and drive with his wife, doing the right thing. He gets hit by somebody texting and driving, kills them both. Their house got paid off, plus their kids, because they both had accidental death policies. House got paid off, plus their kids were taken care of just because they had an accidental death product, which is extremely important. And really know your actuary tables. Below 45, it's the leading cause of death, is an accident. So it makes a lot of sense to at least have your leading cause of death covered for your mortgage. So you could use that on more millennials, for example, if they didn't see the value in maybe a higher premium, or if the budget was super tight. Those are some areas that you can identify to help pivot into those. So make sure you walk out of the house with something versus nothing. So the other scenario that I would give you, and the last one, is you need to understand when to go big for your clients. So when you do your financial inventory, and maybe you have a client that's maxing out their 401k, and they're only getting a 5% match. So maybe they're putting $19,000 in their 401k a year, and they're only getting a 5% match, and so they have extra maybe $14,000 on an annual basis that they could start to develop a tax-free strategy for. That would be an area where I would slow down, and I would want to start to introduce an IUL opportunity. That would be an area where I'm going to make sure and say, hey, the best type of money is free money, so I'd love that you stick with your match, but we need to start to develop a tax-free strategy that puts you with the S&P 500, because the S&P 500 out-earns all mutual funds at least 96% of the time. So we can put you where you want your money. We can index it, which basically allows you to keep all your gains, not participate in losses. It also maximizes your income when you retire. It also allows you tax-free loans before 59.5, unlike a 401k. So we're going to start to develop a tax-free footprint for you and your future, because right now we don't know what taxes hold. We don't know between Social Security, Medicare, national debt, where taxes are going to be. So sometimes we've got to slow down when we have those big cases in front of us and build some value to check interest. It's no different than with annuities. It's no different with IULs. Maybe they refinance their house, they've saved $1,000 because they wrapped up premium, and now they want to save for retirement, but we don't ask good enough questions, so we never get there. Sometimes you need to know when to go big. Most of the time, 90% of the time, we're going to take care of the exact scenario that they wanted. But sometimes I'd really encourage you to take your time with these clients, because those are some of your potential clients that need the help the most, that actually can capture the most amount of income for you as well. So a lot of times when I'm sitting with business owners, for example, we start to talk about retirement savings, etc. Those are clients that generally don't have maybe a 401k, maybe there's a smaller business, maybe they get no free matching. These are type of individuals that you need to identify to help create that value. So just understand and know when you need to go big, but most of the time, take care of why they're there and what they requested, because that is how you're going to really help them and make the difference for you and your family. So understanding how to pivot from when someone's lukewarm to a different product, it's okay. Don't present two products at the same time, because confused people do nothing, okay? But make sure that you have a product in your bag, like an accidental death product, that you can pivot to, like an IUL, that you can pivot to make sure that you can present a different solution to the product, because not all the time the solution that you offer is going to be the one they want, regardless of how great our solutions can be. So make sure that you have in the back of your mind, you know how to close it, and you know which product you're going to do. And I think you're going to find a ton of success inside of what we do here at Family First Life. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you guys having me on the call today. Make sure you share and like and send out this post to everybody. And we'll see you next week. Take care.